Let's talk about dandruff. It's probably one of the most common things I see in my clinic, and it's generally misunderstood, which is problematic because it can lead to hair loss. I'm Dr. Blake Brooks. I'm a board-certified dermatologist and hair specialist, and on this channel, I talk about all things hair, with some things skin and beauty thrown in too. If that sounds like something you're interested in, please like this video, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any new content. I put out videos on a regular basis, so if there are certain topics you want to know more about, just let me know. So dandruff is kind of interesting because it has this really clear visual for so many people. So many of my patients don't believe me when I diagnose them with dandruff because they view dandruff as that picture of snowflakes on the shoulders of a black sweater. And while dandruff can look that way, it definitely doesn't always. In dermatology, we call dandruff seborrheic dermatitis. The name is actually really helpful here because it kind of tells you, at least in part, why that visual I just mentioned is inaccurate or at least incomplete. Seborrheic refers to the seborrheic distribution, which basically means areas that have a lot of sebaceous or oil glands. And that's not just the scalp. It includes the central face, the armpits, ears, central chest, groin. But that's definitely not to say that every person with dandruff has scales and flakes in all of those areas. In fact, most people don't. Most people have one or a few areas, but that is to say, if your scalp, ears, and face are flaky, we might have just hit on the culprit. The other part of that snowflakes on a black sweater picture I mentioned before that is inaccurate is this idea that dandruff is mild, because that picture sounds like a little flaking, no biggie, and certainly sometimes it is. But seborrheic dermatitis can look really different in different skin types and on different people. It could even look like the skin is lighter than normal or present almost like ringworm in darker skin types. And sometimes seborrheic dermatitis can be very inflamed and look like there are these large red plaques, which we can refer to as plaque seborrheic dermatitis or sometimes sebopsoriasis, because it starts to take on features that we typically think of as associated with psoriasis. In fact, when patients come into my clinic with dandruff and are scared, it's often when they fall into this category and are worried that they have psoriasis. Certainly, you can have psoriasis that primarily affects the scalp. So if you're concerned about this, you should see a dermatologist in person. They'll take a look at your nails and the rest of your body and joints to confirm that there are no other features that would be concerning for that diagnosis. Now that we've touched on how different this condition can look in different people, from mild flaking to angry red flaky plaques, and what areas can be affected, let's talk about what's happening and why that's so important for your hair. One of the things that a lot of my patients tell me is that they thought they had a dry scalp, and that makes sense, right? Complete sense. Flaky skin, we think dry, flaky skin that needs to be babied and moisturized. So in line with that, many of my patients stop showering or decrease how often they shower to avoid drying the skin out further. And unfortunately, this actually makes things worse. But quick aside here to say that not all flakes on the scalp are seborrheic dermatitis. You can actually have a dry scalp, and sometimes you need a little help to tell the difference. But a good clue is to take a look at the scale. Seborrheic dermatitis scale tends to have an almost yellow hue and be more oily and larger flakes, whereas dry scalp scale tends to be a bit more like a fine white scale. Back to seborrheic dermatitis. What's happening in seborrheic dermatitis, or dandruff, is that for reasons we don't fully understand, certain people seem to be better hosts for a type of yeast called Malassezia. So these flakes don't indicate that you have a dry scalp, they actually indicate that you have an overgrowth of yeast. And before you get nervous, this yeast is not contagious. It's on everyone. People who have dandruff, people who don't. It's just that people with dandruff or seborrheic dermatitis, they have more of it and they respond differently to it. So is the flaking the yeast? No, it's not. But it's a sign that more yeast is present because it's how your skin is responding to the yeast. So we don't fully understand seborrheic dermatitis, which sounds a little strange because dandruff sounds like something so common, we should really get it, but it's actually pretty complicated. What we do know is that the yeast that causes dandruff breaks down oil on the skin, which allows more yeast to grow, no good, but also creates an inflammatory response, worse. And this is the important part for hair, so stay tuned. When this inflammatory response is triggered, it disrupts the skin barrier and causes the skin to start making more and more skin cells, which we see as flaking. So the flakes are actually skin. They're not yeast. But does that mean that we need to avoid showering because we could further dry the skin out? No, no, and no. These flakes are telling us we need to decrease the yeast population, and not showering just allows the yeast to grow unchecked. What we need to do is get to the bottom of what's happening, so decrease the yeast with anti-yeast shampoos. But if your scale is really, really thick, that can be really hard to accomplish. The scale is like a barrier, preventing the medication from getting to where it needs to go, because the medication needs to get beneath the scale to the skin where the yeast is actually growing. So to do this, here's what I do for my patients who have seborrheic dermatitis on their scalp and a lot of scale. First, I tell them to shower at least 3 times a week. Then I tell them to alternate a salicylic acid-based shampoo with an anti-yeast shampoo. I'll talk about my favorite anti-yeast shampoo in a minute and why I love it for hair loss, but in terms of salicylic acid shampoos, the one most people know is T-Sal. Salicylic acid is an exfoliant, so it helps to kind of lift that scale up. So if you shower with salicylic acid on a Monday, effectively lifting the scale up, then on Tuesday shower with the anti-yeast shampoo, you have a better chance of the anti-yeast shampoo ultimately getting to where it needs to go to work. So why does this matter for hair loss? You have dandruff, right? So what? It doesn't bother you. Why should you change your whole regimen? Well, remember when I told you that the yeast causes inflammation in the scalp? That right there is the problem. Unchecked inflammation in the scalp leads to hair loss, usually in the form of shedding that's reversible, but that's assuming you address the cause of the shedding in the first place. Okay, so maybe you're somebody who has male or female pattern hair loss and think, hey, I have hair loss, but it's from another cause. So what if I have dandruff too? No. Hair loss can be from multiple causes, and you want to eliminate any contributing factors, so get that inflammation in check. In line with this, my favorite anti-dandruff shampoo is my favorite because not only does it work to decrease yeast, it's also anti-inflammatory and helps to block 5-alpha reductase. Amazing. You can check out my video on male pattern hair loss for a deeper dive into 5-alpha reductase, but the bottom line is that it's a big player in other forms of hair loss, and blocking it is how some of our most well-loved medications for hair loss work. Think finasteride or Propecia. So that's pretty amazing. We get anti-yeast, anti-inflammatory, and pro-hair growth all in one fell swoop. The shampoo is called Nizoral when purchased over the counter and contains ketoconazole. That's the powerhouse ingredient doing all the work here at 1% strength. Now, if you go to a dermatologist, you can get this prescribed at 2%, essentially doubling the strength. And sometimes the over-the-counter stuff just doesn't swing it. So you may need something stronger, in which case that's when a prescription is really important. But the over-the-counter Nizoral is a great place to start, and it might cut it for you. Plus, here's the extra benefit. You can use it as a face wash and a body wash if you have dandruff in other locations. Now, how you use this product really, really matters. If you use this for a minute and rinse it off, you're not going to see the benefits. You need the shampoo to sit on your scalp for a minimum of 5 minutes before rinsing. And when I say scalp, I do mean scalp. You do not need to use this on your hair. Dandruff is treated by treating the skin, and ketoconazole, while an all-star ingredient that I love, it's drying to the hair, so you don't need to use this on your hair. Sometimes you can be doing the T-Sal and doing the ketoconazole, but your scalp is still itchy, irritated, and red. In that case, you should probably go and see your dermatologist or hair specialist, because that inflammation, that's the really bad player for hair loss, might need something stronger to keep it at bay. In those instances, I'm often prescribing a pretty potent topical steroid solution for the scalp to try to keep that inflammation down. It's also a good idea to be evaluated because, like I said earlier and have said and will say over and over again, hair loss is often more than one thing. So if you have ongoing irritation and itch, it might indicate a second process that we don't want to miss. Now, I wish I could tell you that if you do all of this, your dandruff will be gone, you'll never have to do this again, but unfortunately, seborrheic dermatitis is a chronic condition, meaning we manage it. We don't fix it permanently. So these strategies are good for life, and you'll probably have to use them for a long while. All right, guys, that's my 2 cents on seborrheic dermatitis or dandruff, why you should treat it, especially if you're experiencing hair loss, and treatments that can further bolster hair regrowth. Let me know if you guys have used these treatments in the comments, or if you have other strategies you've employed that have worked well for you. More on other things related to hair soon, so stay tuned.